Hello everybody, my name is Karen Brown and today I'm going to show you how to do a beginning weaving class. We're not going to need a lot of equipment for today's project. We're going to need one little gourd bowl that we have put holes around. They're 1/2 inch down and 1/2 inch apart on the weaving holes. We'll need one package of paper twist in the color of your choice. I've chosen a dark green today. This is a 6-yard bundle, which is typical that you can find at most of your hobby and craft stores. We also need some wax linen thread. We've also chosen a pale green so that we can see the stitches really well and make a nice contrast. We've got a couple of pieces of sanding mesh, 320 and 400, so we can sand the outside of our gourd nice and smooth and get a good finish on it. I have one tapestry needle, no point. We don't need to do a blood sample while we're doing our weaving. Need a pair of scissors and a band clip. Larger ones are a little better to use, but this one's just fine. And this is in case we need to stop and it'll hold our stitching tight. Because when we were doing coiling like this, we want to make sure that we always keep our stitches nice and tight so that the rim is very solid on the piece when it's finished, and it'll give us a good solid rim and the stitches don't move. You also need to have an eraser to remove the pencil lines that we use to draw the line on for our holes to mark them, and a paper towel to wipe off the excess dust. So we're going to start off with our 320 paper, our sanding mesh, and we're going to lightly sand off the entire outside of the gourd. This is going to give us a really smooth surface, and we'll use a little paste wax when we're all done, or spray varnish to seal it all up. But just give it a light once over as you're going. If the edge up here is very sharp, you also want to do a little bit of rounding over here so that as we weave, we're not worrying about our threads breaking off on the sharp edge. Sometimes you can get rid of the pencil lines with your sanding mesh or paper as you're going around. If it's stubborn and it doesn't always come off, you want to take your eraser to it. Make sure you get all those pencil lines out. We'll do the 400. As you can see, I've sanded this gourd on the bottom. He didn't sit very flat when we started, so I put him on the belt sander to give him a nice flat bottom so he'll sit really well on the table for us. I've cleaned it out the inside as well and painted it black to finish it and seal it. I find that finishing the inside gives the gourd a more finished look when the product is done, and by sealing it, it keeps any bacteria and molds or dust that may have been in the inside sealed on the inside of the gourd. Okay, wipe this excess off. Now our gourd is very smooth on the inside, or on the outside, and the inside lip is also been smoothed. We've still got some pencil lines left, so we're just going to come up here and erase this off. Alrighty. When we get ready to use our wax linen thread, we're going to need to pull off about 9 feet. So that's a yard is from the tip of your finger to the tip of your nose, like so. We're going to do 3 of these. And we'll cut off what we've got. Then I'm just going to take the thread and I'm going to run it over the needle twice to flatten out so that it'll go right through the eye of the needle to thread. The wax will keep it flat long enough. We're going to fold it over, but not all the way in half. You want to leave yourself a good tail to work with. And then we're going to tie this on any hole in the gourd. We're going to poke through, single knot, and then one more. Pull tight. Then we're going to grab both of these tails and we're going to pull that knot around to the inside. Now if this is your first time project, we're going to start from this point here and we're going to put on our thread. We're going to start with the end. You can line this up just slightly over the knot we just put in, but not past the hole behind where you're going to go. And because I'm right-handed, we're going to go around in a counterclockwise manner. If you're left-handed, you want to start on the other side and go in a clockwise manner so it's a little easier for you to handle the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay this up here and hold it with my left hand. I bring the work over the top of the rim, and we're going to put the needle through the hole. It's easier to do this than going from the outside to the inside, so you can always see your needle and you can always know which hole it's going to go into. This tail we want to put right up against the shell of the gourd so that we weave that in as we go. Pull the excess through, line up the stitch, pull it tight. Then you're going to use your left hand. The gourd is held in these 3 fingers and the thread is held in these 2. We want to pinch with these 2 and hold the gourd here. So this is your proper hand position to go here. And then we'll go right. The needle's going to go once in each hole around. Pull tight, straight. You always keep your stitches nice and straight up and down. Once we get past the rim and we're stitching to the row below rather than in the holes, we'll notice that the threads will actually pull more to the left. And we're going to do this for one whole row, all the way around, going in once in each hole as we go. Like so. As you can see, we can see the holes down here. And I'm going to stop, and I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to show you how to do a cover row now. And we're going to start this over with a cover row so we can hide these holes. All right? Now we're going to start out by putting the needle through the hole and pulling our thread right out to the front. Again, we're going to take the thread, the paper twist, and we want to lay it up where the knot where we started. We don't want to go past the hole behind or be too shallow. We won't catch this as we're going. We're going to go make a loop like this with our thread through each one of these holes. The paper twist will go in here, and then we'll tie it tight. This is going to be a different stitch than what we're doing as we coil the rest of the spot. So we're going to go right back into the same hole. Pull your thread through, line up your stitch, pull it tight again, and hold it. Now we're going to put the needle back through from the inside out, pull the thread through, loop it over the paper twist, and pull the excess through. Pull tight and hold. You're just looping over the paper twist and going back into the same hole. And as you're doing that, you're covering up the entire row of holes so that you don't even see the holes. And I like to do this feature on my pieces. You'll see just a hair of them as we put the next few rows on because it will pull this paper twist up as we keep our stitches nice and tight. So I'm going to continue this row all the way around, and then we're going to go back to the standard stitch, which is over the top and through the hole from the front. We're going to do 3 rows. We're going to put this one on as our decorative. The next row we're going to go on, we're going to single stitch. Then we'll do a double row stitches, and then we'll do a triple row stitches so you can see the different patterns that you can achieve doing a coiling. I find coiling very relaxing. It's easy to do. Paper twist comes in a multitude of colors. Excuse me. So you have no end of selections of the colors you want to use. You want to use the 9 feet of thread as a good starting point. Once you get used to handling that much thread, you can actually increase it. So you prevent the fact that you have to tie off and add new thread. I wanted to use the 9 to start with, so I know that we're going to add on, so I could show you how to do that later when we run out of thread. Because that's an important part of doing any weaving or coiling, is knowing how to add on new thread. The waxed linen thread we're using today came from Royal Wood Limited. which is a store in New Jersey that carries caning and weaving supplies. This is the wax linen thread. Comes in spools in different thicknesses. What we're using today is 4-ply, which is a standard that I use on all of my weavings. There's also a 2-ply, and it goes all the way up to 12 or more. The thinner the thread, the more it'll break, so I stick with a standard 4-ply. It's a little stronger, and it gives you a nice band of color when you're putting on the stitches. And it also comes in a multitude of color. You can find small spools of black, white, or brown wax linen thread at Walmart and at your local craft stores, or also at Tandy Leather. But you're limited on your color selection. You can also take embroidery floss in the hanks, and you can split it, or you can leave it in the whole form that comes right out of the package. And with a bar of beeswax, you can pull the thread over the beeswax several times to wax it yourself. So you can use up materials that you may have had from other projects. Gourds are the oldest non-food crop that's been cultivated in the world today. They have been around longer than any other product to make. These were our first bowls and containers. Our first beer was fermented in a gourd. They're really good, and they've been still used in some of the third world countries as containers and vessels. Our pilgrims even thought that eggs kept in a gourd lasted longer than in a basket. All right, last stitch. When you get to this point, now you've completed your first row. And we're all the way down. So we're going to lay the coil of paper twist on top of the previous row we've just on our cover row. We're going to go back into the same holes, but we're going to go underneath this, and we want to stay on the right-hand side of the stitches as we put this thread through. So we're going to come into the hole, push the needle up and under and through the hole again, pull the thread through, and just make sure that that thread lines up on the right side, pull tight and hold. This is a single stitch row. Once in each hole as we go around, and pull tight and hold. Keeping the stitches tight will give you a nice solid weave. Everything will hold together well. It won't move. And by going in on the right side, as we pull it tight, it will pull left. And these stitches then all line up so that they look like they're one continuous row as we go up if we continued all in one single stitch row after row. But in this demonstration, I want to show you how to do single stitches, double stitches, and triples to make a wheat pattern. And that way you can get an idea of the different stitch techniques that you can do on projects like this. Sometimes they have a tendency to lean a little more left than you want. You can just make sure just before you tighten it all the way tight is that the stitches line up. And you keep that new stitch on the right side of the stitch below. All right, that's about as short as we want to go. We're going to come around to the back side and work from the inside. We're going to grab this last stitch we just did and pull our thread through, holding it tight one more time, and then we're going to pass the needle through the loop to form a slip knot. Pull that tight. Take the needle off, grab our thread, and we'll pull out another 9. Thread our needle back onto the wax linen thread. And we'll go back in that stitch again. Pull the new thread through. And then we're going to put a single knot tying the tail of the new stitch onto that stitch. And then we're going to take the two tails, the old one and the new one, and we're going to square knot them together. Long end through, and then the short end through. Now we've got it nice and secured. We don't need all that excess. We're going to cut off just a little bit of that. I grab these and I'm just going to give them a little twist together. Kind of keeps them nice and neat. And the wax will hold them together. We're just going to lay that on the inside of that bowl right up against those stitch lines, so as we're going around we'll catch this tail and weave that tail in, so it'll give us a nice neat appearance on the inside of our gourd bowl. And now we're ready to go, and it's just that quick to add new thread on. If you're working on a larger piece or you're getting to the end of the day and you're getting tired, you can stop and put the clip on like so. You want to run it over the stitch, the thread, so that you're holding your thread tight. Now you can leave it for the next day, come back and work on it again. Or you can stop when you've run out of thread and tie it off. Then it's nice and tight and secured, and you don't have to worry about the stitches loosening up overnight. There's a multitude of materials that you can use to do the covered rims to add decorations to any of your gourd bowls. Paper twist is just real easy to work with, nice and colorful. It gives you lots of selection of choices. There's also pine needles that you can do. We use southern pine needles, as they're 12 to 14 to 16 inches long, depending on what type of tree they were grown on and where they're from. Most of the stuff we get is from South Georgia, Florida, along the Gulf, and then there are some in California. The tree out there is called a lalabi pine. They also have long pine needles. They're usually a brown color, but they are very easily to dye, and so they can take on color as well, but they're more expensive than the paper twist. All right, we're just about done with this first single stitch row. All right, we're done with our second row. We're going to start on the second stitch, our third row, and we're going to do this as a double. So rather than go through the holes again, because we don't want to use those holes, we're going to go in on the right side, and because the shell is, we can't go straight through. So we got to go in and then scoop the needle up and under. And you want to go in on the right side of that stitch, push it through and up on the left side, so that you have across the stitch from below. This locks in the new thread that's going to go through. Push the needle through. We're going to pull this tight, and then we're going to do another stitch in exactly the same spot. But this time we don't have to lock it in. We just go straight through and pull it. Push it over just a hair. It opens up. We form a little V as we're going. Do the lock stitch first. In on the right, out on the left, and then back again for the second stitch. So this time we're going to take 2 stitches on each of the stitches below. Now you can see the double stitch where the little V's are starting to form. In on the right, out on the left. So it crosses over. Get that stitch locked into the one below. Pull it tight, hold. And as you can see, you just barely see the holes poking out from underneath our cover row. And I like the look of this. It makes the piece more complete, and you're not looking at the holes that you drilled in the piece. It's just an added extra feature that you can do. It's not something that's mandatory to do every time. Sometimes you got to wiggle those needles up underneath there. It gets, when your stitches are nice and tight, it gets more difficult to work, but that's proof that you've done good tight stitches. There are curved needles that you can use and that come on from leather working. They do have a point on them, so I try to avoid things that have points on them when we're doing this type of work. I don't like getting my fingers pricked and getting blood on my work. But on occasion, those circle needles work really well on smaller, much smaller gourds. So if you're working on just little tiny ones, that needle prevents you from not being able to take a stitch, because the needle has to come through, and if it's too straight, it will bump on the other side and you won't be able to pull the needle out at all. So that curve will help you in that regard. Now I've got a little gap coming in here, so what we're going to do is just going to push that bottom row up and push the bottom one down just to squeeze it together, so we can keep the stitches nice together. We don't want to see any of the gourd gapping between those spots, those 2 rows. When we're doing a double stitch or the triple stitch row, you also have to remember that you're going to need a lot more waxed linen thread, because you're going to be using it up faster doing these multiple stitches. Other plant materials that you can find, cattail leaves you can cut, but they need to be soaked in water so they become pliable. So you want to soak those in real hot water for about a half an hour, get them pliable. You stitch them on wet, and then they will dry. You won't ever use any green material for your stitching, pine needles or anything else, because when it dries, it shrinks, and then it will loosen up all your stitches. When you could rub your fingers on your stitching and none of the stitches move, you know you have it nice and tight. There are many books on weaving and coiling out there that are on the market today. Some of them are advanced and some of them are for beginners. Now I like using books because I can see other patterns that you can use and different stitches and how other people who are professional weavers work the materials that they're playing with. And you get ideas that you can add into. On your cover row that we did first, as you're taking each stitch, you can also add a bead or a drop coin, something along here if you wanted to decorate the bottom of the bowl as well. It's another option that you have to add even a little more bling to your pieces. Okay. And that's our second row that we've done, and we have the nice little V's there. Now we're going to start our third row right where we started down here. We're going to start and stop always in the same place so that our row and our rim is level. If we stopped over here, part of it would be higher than the other side. So we always start and stop in the same spot. Now we're going to do our triple row in our wheat pattern. We're going to come in between the V on the bottom of the stitch below. We're going to go right up over the rim. And because we're going in between the V's, we've already locked the stitch in. So we're going to go 1, 2, and one more, all in the same hole. Pushing the stitch over as we go so we can line it up. And that's going to give you the 3V pattern, or the wheat. And we're going to continue to do that all the way around this row each time. Just going in the row below, and now that we're just about over the rim of the gourd, we're going to keep the material on top of the row below, or we could go slightly to the inside and cover up this lip that we see here with the exposed stitches. It all depends on what the look is you want. If you want the rim to come straight up, then the idea is just to leave this right on top, this new row. But if you want to cover it up, then you'll just gradually work this material over and just slightly inside of the other row so that it will cover up and it will slope in and the whole piece will come into this way. It'll give a curve to your weaving. Now we got a stitch laying next to the other one which doesn't look right, so we want to pull that up a little bit, pull it back over, and hold it out so that we can make sure that we keep our little 3 chicken foot pattern there with the wheats. We're pretty much over the rim of the gourd, so we can go almost straight through with the needle now. We don't have to worry about hitting that rim. One goes out to the left, one straight up and down, and one to the right. Left, and then center, and then right. We're just using our fingertips to pull that tight. And come around to the inside of the bowl, and we're going to work this into the stitch we just did. And put the needle through the back of the stitch, pull the needle tight. I'm going to pass it through here again and pass it through the loop to make a knot. At this row we can hide it quite easily as we're stitching in. Pull a new thread through, tie it once to itself, pull tight, and then take the 2 legs and square knot. Long end through the loop and then the short end through the loop. Sure, our tails are tucked where they need to be. On a decorative rim, such as this is, I usually do odd numbered rows to make it just like in a floor arrangement. We want to do odd numbered rows, keeping our little wheat pattern going as we're working up. So you can see we did 1 here, then we did our 2, and now we're going into 3. So it just fans out as we're working our way up. As we come around to the back edge and we get back to our beginning spot over here, I'm going to show you then how to finish off this row, or any row that you would be working on, as to finish the project and tie off the end. There's one thing about paper twists I'm going to tell you. If it's left in the sun, it will fade. And it fades right back to the brown paper, just like the brown paper bags you get in the grocery store. It will be brown. So I recommend that you don't leave these out in the sun, or put them in a sunny window or any sunny room, unless you plan on not caring if this stuff fades or not. All right, we're going to bring this material over. We're going to clip this. We can hold our stitches in place. Now we're going to come back over here, and we're going to come up and we're going to cut this about even with the start one. So grab our scissors. We'll pull this up a little bit. Pull that last stitch tight again. Stuff out of the way. And we'll take this one last stitch here, make one more wheat pattern. All right, a little bit pushy there. All right, now we're down to our last stitch where we want to go. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a wrap edge on here. We're going to go multiple times to the same spot and laying the stitches down right on top, one right next to the other. So we'll start out with our first original stitch, and then just going to go right back into the same hole over and over and over again till we get a nice band, and we're going to lay the stitches right next to each other. So we end up with a continuous row right on the end spot. So we can really tighten that down. Gives it a nice, neat appearance. It's going to hold it. Because in reality, we really don't tie a knot in this part of the end. What we're going to do is we're going to run the needle back through this wrapping. Lay that right next to it. Pull it tight. Now we've got this nice little wrap up here. We're going to take our needle with the remainder of our thread, and we're going to go from the front. We're just going to push it right through, wiggle it all the way through, right through that whole great big wrap we just did. Put that needle right through there. Pull it through. And pull it tight. And the wax linen will hold that right in position, cut it off flush, and it's all finished. And there's our rim. I hope you enjoyed today's class that we're doing, and that you'll try this on your own. Thank you.